Hello everyone, welcome back to the second video of the Classical Sicilian Defense series. So before starting to the variations itself, I want to explain two things. First off, I apologize for not making a video last week because I had exams, and now that my exams are done, I can finally go back to making videos and explain these variations. Okay, and the second thing that I would like to explain is that for the upcoming videos, this video included, I realized that I'm not able to actually make like a complete 100% analysis of the entirety of the opening because there are many positions, like for example in the bishop e2 line that I'm going to be explaining now, there are about like 60 positions that I haven't checked with Stockfish to find the best continuation on. That being said, I think that this video series will provide a very good guide to your journey into starting to play the Classical Sicilian Defense. There's a lot of theory, don't get me wrong. As you can see here, I think there's about 1,296 moves there and a lot of annotations. So there will still be a lot of content here, but it's not going to be 100% correct, as in like you can play this and you don't need to do your own research. I think that you need to do your own research on those critical positions. So on those critical positions, you can download obviously the PGN as usual in the description down below. I put the word research. So for example, if you search the word research here, I have about 58 positions here. You can see 58 positions where I put the word research, meaning that I haven't found the best continuation or I haven't checked with Stockfish. So I'd recommend doing that on your own. And obviously practicing a lot with a lot of blitz or rapid. And yeah, so that's it for the introduction. We'll get right into the content. So we're obviously going to do the Classical Sicilian, knight c6, and the move here bishop e2. In general, this is a slower and more positional approach. The good thing about this is that first off, it speeds up development. It doesn't get into more complicated lines like bishop c4 or like bishop g5. But I don't think that it's particularly maybe the best try. I think that's still I think everyone agrees that the Richter Rouser is still the best reply to the Classical Sicilian, but it's still sharper, obviously. So against bishop e2, the good thing is that it speeds up development. You prepare bishop e3 and like castles short. But the problem with bishop e2 is that it does not fall in line with the typical plan of the Yugoslav attack, which is like bishop e3, queen d2, and castles long. So typically this is not what white goes for, and as a result, if white does not go for the Yugoslav attack, we do have options, for example, to play g6 here, going into a dragon, but as Sam Shanklin explained in his chessable course and his short and sweet part, it's technically a better version of the dragon because the bishop on e2 isn't as good as, for example, on c4 and on e3, going for f3, queen d2, and long castles. So this is not as dangerous, and g6 is definitely an option that that we can play in this position. But I would like to explain the main move, which is e5. So similarly to the f3 variation in the previous video, e5 is the thematic move, the Boleslavsky type of approach. And from here, there are three main moves, essentially. Knight f5 is bad for obvious reasons, taking on d5. And there are three options here, which are knight c6, which I think is kind of dubious. There's the move knight b3, and there's the move knight f3. So knight c6, let's start with this one. We can just play b takes c6, and after castles, bishop e7, we can just play king h1 first, just to get out of this queen, like preparing f4 and getting out of queen b6 check. Castles f4, e takes f4, bishop takes f4, and bishop e6. Maybe this is another position that I recommend doing more research on. This is not so critical, and not many people go for this, so I didn't really do much research on it, but this definitely seems playable. We have ideas of, for example, either queen c7 or queen b6, bring the rook in, like rook d8, or so on. We can also reroute the knight to e5, for example. So that's one of the options. And knight c6, you won't see it very often. The next move is knight b3, which I think you will see quite often because This is something which looks normal in the Najdorf. For example, you bring the knight to b3, you just castle, safe and sound. But the problem in here is that because this is like different than the Najdorf, obviously, we haven't played a6, and thus we can spend it. We can save a tempo and immediately go for a5 and try to go for a4. So maybe not in this position now, because it's better to play bishop e7 immediately and go for castles first before going for a5. But typically, yeah, we can see in the continuation that, for example, after castles, we can just castle again. And okay, there are many moves here. I think let's start off with the main stuff, which is bishop e3. I think we can immediately go for a5 here. And if they play a move like knight d5, then we can just take on e4, I think. We should be okay here. Yeah, for example, we can see a game bishop b6, queen d7. I mean, knight c7 isn't really dangerous. I think just rook b8 and we're completely fine here. Yeah. So, knight d5 is not so good. Knight d2 is an interesting move. I think this is quite a good option, I think. Yeah, did I say I think too many times? I think I did. But basically this move just aims to not weaken the position with a4, because a4, we know that the thematic move is knight b4, where we want to immediately go for d5, and we get a lot of play there, as we will see later. But knight d2 is a logical move, just controlling c4, preparing either knight c4 or bishop c4, and after which I think we can just play bishop e6, knight c4, and we can play the move b5 here. So this is a strong move. The point being that this knight is protecting this guy, and if it moves away, then we can take it. So I think the only move here, the only reasonable move is, I mean, either knight b5 or knight b6, but I think knight b6, just rook b8 should be okay. So knight takes b5, we can take on e4, f3, knight f6, knight c takes d6, knight d5. So we're attacking this guy, and there's some pressure over here. But we're not going to win a piece, because after bishop f2, if we just take on d6, then, for example, I think this is decent, but I don't think that there is any reason to go for this. Though it's definitely playable. I think that a stronger move, and I think Engine recommended also, is the move knight f4. Just trying to go after the bishop. And after rook e1, queen b8 here. And I think we can see that the pressure is going to be a lot, and there's only one move here to equalize. We can see, as the Engine says, c4. We're basically going to win our pawn back, because we can see the following continuation. c4, knight takes e2, rook takes e2, bishop takes c4. Seeing that these knights are very clumsy. So knight takes c4 and queen b5, rook c1 and a4, because we want to prevent the white from playing a4 themselves. And so I think this is quite a good position, actually, because our bishop has potential here. It's not blocked off by the d6 pawn. This is definitely a complicated line. I don't think this has ever been seen before with this queen b8 idea, with this knight f4 and queen b8 idea, but it's definitely an option. So going back, knight d2 is an option. In this position, instead of knight d2 or knight d5, white can try the move a4 here, but I think it's not a very good move, because we have the move knight b4, very thematic. After a4, we automatically respond with knight b4, and after f4, bishop e6, king h1, rook c8, bishop f3. So just overprotecting the d5 square, but we can still play d5 here. And for example, f takes e5, knight takes e4. There's always going to be a weakness over here on c2, which is why we played rook c8 and knight b4 as one of those ideas. So after bishop d4, you can play knight c5 here. I think the simplification leads to basically equality, and I think black has equalized here. This was actually played once, I think, in a game where between two 2200s, so definitely good players. And bishop e2 was played, which actually allows the move bishop e3, and suddenly black is going to get a clamp with the move d4, and the c2 pawn is very weak. Rook c1 is not playable, and this is basically just a terrible position for white. So that's one of the options again with this bishop f3 move. this a4 idea. Yeah, we can just see this continuation. Okay, and so maybe going back to this position, we can also see other options such as bishop f3. So similar to the other position, but this one, it's I think it's not as strong because the f pawn hasn't moved yet, and thus it restricts some of the potential that white has to try to chip away at the center. But after bishop f3, we can go with the same idea, a5, and I think the only logical idea here is to play a4. But after which we still have the same idea, knight b4, bishop g5, just an idea to try to take away the knight and occupy d5, bishop e6, and knight b5. This should be a fine position because we can immediately play d5 here, but I think you should do your own research on this. Okay, so bishop f3 is covered. The other move is king h1. This is something you will often see. Just trying to step away from any queen b6 ideas, preparing f4 obviously. This is discussed in Alex Yermolinsky's book, after which I think we can just play a5, and against a4, knight b4, then again we see this idea a lot. And against f4, we can just play bishop e6. And f5 is basically the only critical option here, and I think it's been played the most. Against any other move, like for example bishop e3, I think rook c8 is just completely fine here. We're gonna have constant pressure. And against f5, I think bishop c4 is now an additional option. So against f5, I think that bishop takes b3 is a good option, and c takes b3, we can immediately strike the center with d5. And after, for example, e takes d5, knight b takes d5. So don't play knight f takes d5 because this allows bishop f3, and suddenly this pressure is very annoying. And if we're forced to take on c3, we correct white's structure, and knight c6, this looks like a terrible position with the two bishops that white has, and black does not have a lot of play. So after knight b takes d5, knight takes d5 is possible, queen takes d5, knight takes, bishop f3, rook a d8, rook d1, and knight b4. Because of tactical threats on the back rank, obviously they can't take on b7 or like trade and take on b7. And for example, bishop d2 I think is the best move. We can immediately play b6 here, and I think bishop c5 is coming. We have a strong knight on b4. This weakness is not very, this double pawn weakness is not a strength at all for white, and we should be doing fine here. So also one final detail in here is that it seems logical to play bishop f3 here, but we actually have a very concrete threat as to why this is concrete move actually as to why this bishop f3 is not a good move. Knight c3, bc3, and e4. I think black is already slightly better in this position because after bishop e2, queen b6, the rooks are coming in. For example, bishop c4. We can play h6 just to prevent bishop g5 and taking on f6. Queen e2 and bishop c5 here. This should be very, very good for black. We have a good bishop. We can bring the rooks in. And I don't see how, for example, white can't even like have a good plan of attacking, and this should be pretty good. So going back here, okay, so king h1 is already covered. We've already covered bishop f3, and we've just covered bishop king h1. So let's go for the next move, the immediate f4. I think a5 is pretty standard here. So basically, without the inclusion of bishop e3 and bishop e6, white does not threaten f5 at the tempo. So like playing the move f5 is not very logical. I think we can just like aim to break open the center with d5 eventually. So here there are two moves. I think a3 is already not a good move because it allows a4. And after that, we can knight d2. We can play the move knight d4 here. And after knight f3, we can take on e2, just taking the bishop pair away. Queen e2, queen c7, bishop e3, bishop e6. And this should be a completely fine position. We're threatening bishop c4. We can bring the rooks in. And this is going to be pretty nice with d5 ideas also in the future. And instead of bishop e3, maybe f5 is a mistake already because you can play h6. We need to keep note that if white gets to take on f6 and plant our knight on d5, without extra support, we're going to be worse. So we need to play this important h6 move. And after rook e1, I think, Stockfish recommends b6, and I think bishop e7 is completely fine here, or even bishop a6. So that's the other option if they go for an early f4 without bishop e3 or without any of those other moves. And against bishop e3, I think this is the one you may face most often. We can either play bishop e6 here and try to go for d5, which is one of the ideas, or go for the a5 idea, which I think I really like. But we can also discuss the bishop e6 move, after which king h1, we can play d5 immediately. For example, takes. I mean, we can just follow this line, bishop takes, c3, f5, and f4, g6. We should get a pretty good play here. And against f4, because we note that white has already played bishop e3, and now they played f4, meaning that we can take on f4 and make white spend another tempo. First off, bishop f4 is the main move, but if rook takes f4, then we can play knight d7, try to get our knight to e5 and c4, and I think it's pretty decent. But if bishop f4, which I think you'll see more common, we can break with the d5 move. e5, knight e4, knight takes, pawn takes, c3, and we can trade here. I think we should be completely fine after rook f d8. So this is also not bad at all. So yeah, and in this position, after bishop e6, okay, there's that king h1 move, and there's the f4 move. But the other move, which is interesting, is bishop f3. After which, I think we can play the move a5. Then again, we're threatening a4, a3. So if they play a4, we can go with the same plan of knight b4 and d5. But if they play knight d5 here, the critical variation is a4, knight c1, takes on d5 now, pawn takes d5, and I think knight b8, bring it to d7. Eventually we can even bring maybe the knight to e8 and play f5. This should be a fine position as well. So this knight b5 move, knight d5 move. So I recommend a4, as I said before. But another option is bishop takes d5. I don't think it's a particularly good option, but it was played by Lekong Liam once against a low-rated player in the Asian Continental 2018. The problem is that after e takes d5, knight b4, there's a move c3, knight a6, and okay, the idea is maybe you can bring the knight to c5, maybe bring the knight to d7 first, and then bring the other knight to c5. But after the strong move a4 here, I think that white has a pretty good clamp in the position. This pawn in the future may be weak. The knight in b3 can't exactly be kicked, so this should be better for white, which is why I don't like the move bishop d5. Okay, bishop f3, we've already covered all of these variations with bishop e6. But the main option in this position with the bishop on e2, bishop on e3, white has already short castled, is the move a5. So very thematic. And okay, the move knight d5 here is possible, but this allows a4. So basically this idea is that they want to give up the pawn, which we will gladly take, but they will get maybe some play with bishop e6, but it's not going to be enough, I think. The idea, but is really simple, just to free up the c pawn to play c4 immediately. And in general, if they get the c4 move with the e4 pawn already protected, it should be a pretty good position for white. I think it's very comfortable, actually. So here we can just take on e4, bishop b6, queen d7, knight c7, rook b8. I think black is already better here. Just up a pawn, and okay, maybe next move we can play f5, or even bishop d8, or bishop d8 first and then f5, and then yeah, we can continue on from there. Okay, so instead of knight d5, knight d2 is a pretty serious option. It prevents the weakening a4 move because we can play knight b4 then, and after which we can play bishop e6, knight c4, and b5 here. So this obviously aims to dislodge this knight, trying to get it away from protecting the e4 pawn, and after which knight takes b5 is the only good move, basically. And knight takes e4, f3, knight f6, and knight c takes d6. Knight b takes d6, I think is a mistake. Yeah, apparently the engine recommends knight d5 here and says that black is already significantly better. Bishop f2 and knight f4. Yeah, so this is similar to the other option. So basically this thing can like kind of, the ideas are very applicable to the other variations. So instead of knight b takes d6, the main move is knight c takes d6, after which we can play knight d5, same as before. Bishop f2, knight f4, same as before. Rook e1, and the move queen b8 here. I think this is a novelty, if I'm not mistaken. At least it's not available in the Lichess database. The idea is that black has enough counterplay with rook d8 coming, and eventually white actually has to go up with the pawn with playing c4 and okay, we'll just continue. So like c4 is the only move. Any other move we can just respond with rook d8 the same, and it's just going to be like -3 for in the position. So c4 is the only move. We can take on e2, rook takes e2, bishop takes c4, because this because we have some tactics over here. Knight takes c4, queen b5, rook c1 and a4. So we prevent white from playing a4 themselves, and we should be very comfortable in this position. Our bishop's not blocked by the d6 pawn, our queen is active, and we can bring the rooks into the game. So we'll continue on to the next one. Okay, so knight d2 and knight d5 we've covered. The move a4 here is maybe okay, it's definitely playable, but I think it's weakening as with many of these other variations because of this move knight b4. So against a4, it's like almost 100% we play knight b4, and against f4 we play bishop e6 here, king h1, rook c8. So we're putting some annoying pressure on c2. This knight is also kind of misplaced. And after bishop f3, just covering d5 more, we can still break with d5 here actually. So f takes e5, knight takes e4, and the point being that knight takes e4, just I think, okay, we have to move knight c2, yeah. Attacking this guy, and this guy is still hanging, so knight f6, bishop f6, pawn f6, and knight e3 I think should be winning for black. So they can't take on e4 with the knight or the bishop either, because bishop, I think we can just take on e4, yeah, and this is not very good. We're threatening to take on c2, very good position. So the only maybe the best move here is actually bishop d4, protecting c3, after which we can go with knight c5, and this exchange, the following exchanges will be quite good for black. So bishop c5, bishop c5, and okay, there are many moves here, for example knight b5, but we can still respond to bishop e3 and we should be doing fine there. In one game that was played again by 2200s, the move bishop e2 was played, but I think this is a bad move because they didn't see black's threat, which is bishop e3, and suddenly d4 is coming, and this pawn is weak, rook c1 can't be played, and yeah, white is already in a load of trouble here. Black is already better. Okay, so we've covered all of these moves: the knight d5, knight d2, and a4. And that's pretty much it for this one. Okay. Okay, so the next one is maybe bishop e3 before castling. This tries to set up, I mean, we can obviously transpose after like castling and like castling, we can go to the same line with a5. But this bishop e3 move adds another option, which is trying to go for f3, queen d2, and castles long. So after f3, we can still play a5, and a4, we can play knight b4. We're going to get in bishop e6 and d5. We're very happy here. Okay, And maybe another move is the move bishop g5, which you typically see in the Sveshnikov, just trying to take on f6 and then play knight d5. This is somewhat dangerous, but we can just, I think, respond with castles here. I think knight takes e4 is not playable, or it is probably playable, but knight takes e4 here, knight takes d7. I think this is aligned with king e7 and knight c8. Yeah, and rook takes c8. Supposedly this is playable, but I don't recommend this way of playing. So instead of knight takes e4, we're gonna play the move castles here. Bishop f6, aligned with the idea. Bishop f6, knight d5, and we can play the move bishop g5 here. And we're gonna get f5 in. We're gonna have the bishop pair. We're gonna get a lot of active counterplay here, and we should be doing pretty well here. For example, castles, we can just play bishop e6, and we should be fine here. And against a4, we can play knight e7, bishop c4, king h8, stepping out of the bishop's diagonal. Knight takes e7, queen e7, bishop d5, and the move f5 here. So very thematic, I think. E takes f5, bishop f5, castles, and e4. So this was played by Alexei Shirov against Lubavitch in 1993. And it's pretty, yeah, basically black gets the bishop pair and gets a lot of active play here. Should be fine. So this bishop g5 move is not dangerous at all. And that pretty much, I think, covers everything in this in the knight b3 line. So we will just go back to here. Knight f3 is maybe the most common move and the most testing move. So knight f3, the difference between this and knight b3 is that first off, with the knight on b3, we can attack with a5, a4. But in here, playing a5 doesn't make much sense. It just weakens b5, and a5 is just not a good move. So we can play like a6, b5 at some point, which is more aligned with the characteristic of the position. And in here, the difference, another main difference, is that the knight on f3, along with the bishop in g5, controls the g5 square, meaning that we don't have this. For example, if we can just imagine that the bishop takes on f6, our bishop is already on e7, we take back, and at d5, we don't have the move bishop g5 anymore because white can just take that. So the knight on f3 is very useful in controlling this g5 square and preventing this resource with bishop g5, which is why it's very important to play the move h6 here to prevent bishop g5. Okay, there's also another move, bishop e7, but I don't think it's particularly good because white can go for bishop g5, castles, bishop f6, and knight d5. I think this is quite unpleasant with c4 coming. Yeah, this is not what we want to play. So we need to play the move h6 here, and there are maybe there's basically only one move, which is castles. The move h3 here is a common idea just to prevent bishop g4, but I think this can transpose after, for example, bishop e7 or bishop e6, castles, bishop e7, rook e1, and this can transpose, for example, like this one. But the reason that I want to bring up the h3 move is that it raises another option for white to choose, which is bishop e7. And instead of going for castling, which transposes to the main line, white can play the move bishop e3 here. After castles, queen d2, we can play bishop e6 and rook d1. So this one is an interesting move just to stop black's d5 advance. But I think after this move, this Stockfish already values his position as a quarter of a pawn better for black, so meaning like 0.25-ish. And the move here, which is very interesting, the best computer response is queen c8, trying to just prepare rook d8 here. And after castles, we play rook d8, a3, and b6 here. This is a very interesting, like maybe computer idea, to play queen b7 and try to pressure the e4 pawn. So after rook f e1, bishop f8, we don't need to rush. Queen c1 and knight e7. We want to like either prepare d5 or knight g6 even. It's possible. And basically one of the main ideas is like playing queen b7 and rook ac8. And we have a lot of ideas there. Okay, we can just provide two continuations, either knight h2, which I don't think is a very good move because we can play d5 here. The knight on f3 pressured e5, and now it's not. So we can play d5, takes, knight f takes, knight takes, and bishop takes. c4, bishop b7, and now we have a strong bishop here. They can play bishop f3, but we can just like ignore it and trade rooks, and or even like trade on f3. It's completely fine. And once they trade their light squared bishop, we can even play a move like f6 just to solidify the center. And because if the bishops have been traded, then if the light squared bishop has been traded, then there are no like significant pieces that could occupy this light square complex that we weaken with f6, like that. Yeah. So knight h2 is not a great try. Another move is bishop d3. After which we can play queen b7. I think we should be fine here. Try to bring the rook to c8. Play maybe a6. We can play knight g6 even. I think knight g6 is very logical. And yeah, we should be fine here. So that's the additional option in the h3, like the eighth move h3, and trying to go for bishop e3, which is something not common, I think, but it's definitely playable. And the main line is castles. After which bishop e7. There are many moves here. I think the oldest move, or one of the oldest moves, is the move b3 here. There's also the move h3, which transposes after castles to the main line with rook e1. There's the move bishop e3 here, bishop e6, and knight d2. We can just castles and play, and against bishop c4, we're fine with like doubling the pawns here. I think we can play rook c8 even. I think just ignoring is fine. Yeah, and so bishop e3 is one of those options. Rook e1's the main line, and we should probably discuss the other moves. So b3 is the older move, as I've mentioned before. It often transposes because b3 is an idea to get the bishop to b2 or a3 even. But white can try to avoid them. So after castles, bishop b2, play the move a6, because as I've said before, that a5 doesn't make much sense in this position where they played b3 even. A4, bishop e6, rook e1, and rook c8. So here h3 is possible. We can just go knight b4. I think we have pretty good control here. We're like bishop f1, and we can go d5 here. There's always going to be weakness on c2, so white needs to be careful about that. So ed5, knight f d5, knight d5, and queen d5. Here there are probably like two options. Either the move c4, which I think liquidates to maybe an equal position, but it's still very tactical in this line. And the other move is queen d5, which just simplifies. After bishop d5, rook ad1, we can take on c2, bishop takes e5, and bishop c5, attacking f2. We can liquidate here with bishop d4 and rook c8, and this is pretty equal. Not much to say about this one, though maybe we can argue that these pawns are kind of weaker compared to these pawns, so I think this is definitely playable. And instead of queen takes d5, c4 leads to a more tactical line after queen d1, rook ad1, because there's still many tactics here. After f6, just the only move to defend e5, basically. Knight d4, so we obviously don't want to take because of our bishop, so we play bishop d7 and f4, and suddenly this looks kind of dangerous, but we have tactical resources here, so we can play the move bishop c5, and after fe5, the interesting move rook c to e8. So basically we just want to like put pressure along this line, and we want to try to make use of the spin. So against e takes f6, we can play rook takes e1, and knight c6. So we're just threatening this guy, and in this position there's only one move that equalizes. First off, fg7 is just a bad move because of rook f4. We win a piece. And against rook d1 is a mistake because I think rook f6. And here what is paralyzed? We have rook f4 coming. And if a move like king h1 is played, then we can just take here, or oops, just take with the bishop first, and then like trade everything, and the bishop at the very end hangs, and we're winning. So king h1 is not an option. And basically the only move is like b4 here to try to dislodge the pressure, and after which we have to play the move knight takes b4, king h2, bishop takes a4. Okay, this is already losing for white. For example, okay, 1 rook f2, knight e6. Okay, this is still very complicated, but we should be getting the better end here with rook b2, rook a4, b6, and this diagonal is extremely weak. This long diagonal is extremely weak, meaning that if ever knight d4 comes, we can play bishop c5, and our pieces are way more active. For example, okay, I mean, we're winning the endgame here with an extra pawn, but even without mentioning that, we can play king f7 next, and yeah, our pieces are way more active. So the move rook d1 here is a terrible move, and b4 is the only move. After knight b4, after g7 we saw was bad, so king h2 is like the only, I think one of the only moves to equalize. Okay, there's rook e5 as well, but this is fine. King h2, rook f6, knight b3, bishop d6, so beware that our rook is being attacked here. King g1 and rook f7. Okay, this is equal by objective evaluation, but I think this is a lot easier to play with the black pieces because we have only 2 pawn islands and white has 3 pawn islands, right? Meaning that this pawn on a4 can eventually be weak. So we should be happy to go into that. And yeah, so that covers the c4 move. The c4 move here, which leads to the tactical line I just showed. And I think, I think that pretty much ends the discussion on the move h3 in this position. So the main line, I think, okay, I mean, bishop f1 is the move. Yeah. So, okay, this is not the main line, but this is one of the ideas to just play bishop f1. And after which we can play queen d7. This is actually one of my favorite ideas personally because it looks so interesting. The idea is to bring the bishop to d8 and to either to a5 first off. But it can also go to b6 at some junction. So after knight d2, just to prepare either knight c4 or bishop c4, we can play the move knight a5, which is, I think, a very interesting try. It was played once by Konstantin Sakaev in 1995. After knight cb1, which was played in the game, bishop d8, I think, is very logical. I think d5 enters a lot of more complications, which I don't think is necessary. Just play bishop d8, knight a3, and bishop e6. h3, knight c6, and we have firm control over d4. So for example, knight a c4 and bishop c5. We can see that with this maneuver from the bishop on e7, it went to d8 to b6 and c5. This is like a beautiful bishop now on this diagonal, and we should be doing fine here. I think black has already equalized. So so that covers the my recommendation against bishop f1 in this position. Bishop f1, just remember queen d7. So maybe we should proceed to the main line, or maybe the second one. Okay, in this position, the main line is rook e1, but I probably have to discuss. No, actually, I think I've discussed bishop e3 as well. Yeah. So the main line is rook e1. The idea being that white wants to protect e4 here because they want to play knight d5, and if they can get in c4 and b4, our position is going to be really bad here. So we need to act fast to counter it. We can just simply castle here and h3. So this is one of the ideas to prevent bishop g4. But what if white allows bishop g4? There are 2 moves that allows it, which is bishop c4. This is mentioned in Yermolinsky's book, saying that this is one of Gennady Kuzmin's pet line. I think we can just play bishop e6, And against knight d5, rook c8, c3, knight e5, knight takes f6, bishop takes f6, bishop d5, which is one of the ideas of playing the bishop on c4. I think that knight c4 here is maybe inaccurate. This was one of the lines recommended, but probably queen d7 was recommended by the engine, or I think queen c7 is even fine here. Yeah, but there are a lot of intricacies in this position, so I'd recommend in this specific position try to find the best move. Check it with Stockfish and Leela and stuff. But either way, that's not relevant, not super relevant to our to like the main line and stuff. So bishop c4 is interesting. Definitely a dynamic try. Bishop f1 allows bishop g4, but it's not so simple because it's not like we get bishop g4, we're suddenly winning. h3 here, bishop h5 is the only reasonable option. g4, okay, they can either play bishop e2 or g4. I think bishop e2 is kind of slow. We can play bishop g6, attacking here. And if they go bishop f1, we can either repeat or go for some other option. But against bishop d3, we can play the move knight b4. So this was played against Yermolinsky in 1994. We can see in the database here. But I think knight b4 here is an improvement. And after bishop f1, rook c8, a3, and knight e6. Okay, possibly not knight e6, but just knight c6 here. This should be playable for black here with a6 coming. We can play king h8. Yeah, this seems completely fine here. We can at some point even like play bishop h5, try to pressure this guy, provoke g4. So that's an option. I think knight e6 was recommended in the book, but yeah, the engine doesn't like it at all actually, because we have this move knight h4 and knight f5 is coming. Okay. So that's against bishop e2, and against g4, we can play bishop g6. And okay, there are many moves here. I think bishop g2 is the best try. There's the move bishop c4, but we can play knight a5 here. After bishop d3, we bring the rook to c8, preparing knight c4 or other ideas. We should be fine here. And the move knight h4 here, I think it's a mistake, because we have this, excuse me for a second. Yeah, because we have this typical x-ray on the knight here. So we can play bishop e4, knight e4, knight e4. And obviously if they take on e4, we just take on h4. We should be better. So knight f5 is the only serious option. But after which, I think d5. Yeah, white does have good compensation for the pawn, but ideas like f3 is not possible because of like bishop c5. And we should be happy to play this position up a pawn. For example, knight e7, knight takes e7, f3. Okay, I mean, other moves I think are better. For example, c4, I think we can still go queen b6. We can go for a complicated line here. I think, yeah, queen e6 or queen g6 is even recommended. Queen b2 is also playable. So you can try to check out which one you like for yourself. But a move like, for example, f3, just to demonstrate a bad move in that position, just weakens the diagonal too much. And after queen b6, which looks like it doesn't work after because of bishop e3, but we have the move knight c5 here. After c3, queen d6, we're preparing knight e6, and rook a8 is going to come. Even like f5 ideas become more reasonable as we analyze the position. And white's weaknesses around the king are pretty serious here, so we should be better. Excuse me. Okay, so that covers the move knight h4. The only, I think, serious try is bishop g2, after which we can play rook c8, and a3, I think it's the most played move. We can play rook e8 here, I think should be fine. We can play bishop f8 next move. We can play a6, try to go for b5. Yeah, we should have good play here. Another alternative I think is knight a5, but I think it's outdated, because white has some seriously good options. For example, okay, knight h4, I think bishop e4, right? Oh no. Okay. Yeah, knight h4 seems to be maybe the main refutation, positional refutation, because they can go to f5 and we don't have any tactics on e4, for example. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, I recommend rook e8, and here if they don't, okay, we've already gone through this one where they allowed bishop g4 and they play h3. The main line, which we finally go into, is the move h3 here, just preventing bishop g4, and after which I think we can play bishop e6 and bishop f1. Yeah, so bishop f1. The idea is just to bring the knight to d5 while simultaneously protecting e4. And here we can see I have there are a lot of notes in this position. Typically people say that queen a5 is the best move, but personally, myself and many other players have found this to be not satisfactory, to equalize at least. For example, like bishop d2. Okay, I don't recommend this, so I'm just going to show you. Bishop d2 we can repeat with queen d8, and they can repeat and we can go for a draw here. I think that's one of the options. But let me try to find why I find this unsatisfactory. I think bishop d2 is the correct option. d8, bishop c1. Yeah, okay, but typically, let's see. Try seeing a different line. I think a3 is the move here, yeah. I think a3 here is one of the reasons why I don't like to play this, because it goes into a lot of theory. Something that I'm not really fond of playing here, because white, I think, gets pretty good play in this line. For example, rook c8, rook b1, a6, b4, c7. Yeah, this is the old theory, but I think this is already bad for black. So yeah, just saying that we need, even the engine saying that we need to retreat with the queen d8, and after which white is very comfortable with knight d5, which is why I don't like this queen a5 move. There are many other moves or deviations you can see in the PGN, which I put in this. Yeah, I put the annotations already. But yeah. So if queen a5 is, even though it's like one of the main moves, there are other moves like knight b8. After which I think b3 gets white a very comfortable game, which is why I don't recommend knight b8. But we can just continue to see how b3 is so good, why b3 is so good for white. a6 preparing b5, a4 I think stopping black's counterplay. Knight bd7, bishop b2, rook c8, and knight d2 here. I think that yeah, this position is not very good, because for example queen a5 is the recommended move, and after knight c4, bishop c4, knight b6, bishop f1, we have to move rook c3, but yeah, this enters a forcing variation. But after queen d2, rook f8, rook e3, knight takes c4, rook e4, queen d5, knight d5, bishop c3, knight c3, and white is in this position. We can see white is up the exchange, and this used to be theory. We can see that even Zdenko Kozul, one of the main theoreticians of the Classical Sicilian in the past, has played this. But this is, yeah, we can see modern engines say that they don't like this for black, even though we have like center control, and we do have a pawn for our troubles, for our exchange actually, but it doesn't seem to be enough after rook c4. Yeah, I don't think we can save the draw here, which is why I don't like the move knight b8. Being that queen a5 is one of the main ideas. So I don't recommend knight b8. Knight b4 here is an interesting option, but I don't think yeah, we can see that one of the annotations that I wrote is that this was tried by Yermolinsky after he concluded that the knight b8 to d7 plan is too slow. But okay, the idea is to get the knight to c5 via a6, but I think that it's just even the engine agrees that it's not a very good option after knight a6. Bishop okay, there's the move, I think b3 or here, or even knight d5. Knight d5, knight c5, knight takes f6, bishop f6, and b4. we're just getting pushed around here. I think c4, knight b6. Yeah, it seems reasonable to play as black, and we can argue that maybe these pawns are overextended, but from a human perspective, we can see that it's not easy to target these pawns, so I don't recommend it. So I don't recommend knight b4. I'm very picky on these, on what on these options. So what do I recommend? I recommend the move queen d7 here. So very similar to the other position where play queen d7 to try to bring the bishop to d8. We have the same idea here. So this was also recommended by Grandmaster Brian Smith, and it was also analyzed by Grandmaster Yermolinsky as well in his book. The idea being that we want to bring the bishop to d8, obviously, and we can respond to it like, for example, knight d5 with bishop d8. The other move is also to play knight h7 and f5, which is one of the thematic ideas. And so we get this also queen bishop battery, which provides some attacking chances. So against knight d5, okay, knight d5 is the main move, but b3 is also a very serious option. We can still play bishop d8. And in one blitz game that I played online, I still remember it. Yeah, it wasn't too long ago, but I still remember it. My opponent played bishop a3, and I think I panicked here with knight e8. It wasn't a very good move, just defending this guy. But in here, we have the move bishop a5. And white is forced to retreat because there's this pin. And I think another move like queen d3, rook fc, apparently rook fd8 is pretty good here. Bishop b2 needs to be played anyways. Otherwise, the rook is like going to be targeted always. Rook ac8 can be played, and I think this should be like pretty good for black. Noting that white has spent like a tempo on bishop a3 to b2. They played queen d3, which isn't very useful, and I think black has equalized there. So I think after bishop a5, bishop b2 is the only reasonable option. We can just play knight e7 and okay, for example, knight d2, queen c6, and we have good control here. We can even play knight g6 and knight f5, knight f4 if we want to. So, yeah, if they play b3, we can play bishop d8, and against knight d5 here, we have the knight e7. Okay, we have the I mean, we can play. Yeah, I think I recommend bishop d5 here and e5, knight e7 here. So now we're targeting this guy, and the only logical move is c4. After which, I think we can play bishop b6. We get a strong bishop here, preventing c5 also. Bishop b2, knight g6, b4, and a5. After c5, bishop c7. This is very interesting, actually. I think this needs more research. I don't think black has equalized fully yet, but this is a pretty dynamic option. Instead of bishop b6, bishop a5 is also a move, I think. But after bishop d2, queen d2, b6, I think that this is more pleasant to play from the white side. After bishop d3, knight g6. Okay, maybe this one is, practically speaking, at least visually, it seems nicer. Because we can play rook a8 and like knight f4 at some point. Yeah, so maybe I recommend bishop a5 instead of bishop b6. Either way, you will rarely see these positions. Bishop d8. Okay, so we've covered knight d5. The move knight a4 here is interesting. Wait, sorry, let me read my notes a bit. So basically the bishop wants to go to a7 g1 diagonal, but the knight prevents it from going there. Yeah, so we want to go to b6 actually, but the knight on a4 here prevents it because they can just take. So we're also keeping this knight offside by keeping the bishop on c7. So after c4, for example, c4, you play rook a8, bishop a3, knight e7. Okay, this was played in a game. Queen e2, knight g5 is this is also one of the ideas, to play knight g5 to trade off the thing, to trade off the knights and our bishops. Even like if we have the bishop on d8, we can even play a knight g5 and like go for a double exchange on g5. But the idea being that we want to have the pawn on g5 to prepare g4. Okay, queen e7's the move played. Here we can play g6, bishop c3, king g7, bishop e2. yeah, this should be pretty good. Like rook h8 coming, or even f6, just solidifying. Okay, maybe this is not like up to date. Yeah, in one of the positions I saw that it's after this move it says that white is significantly better after knight c3 apparently. So maybe there should be an improvement here. Knight h7, or even like a6, I think is quite a useful move. So yeah, I think specifically on this position, I recommend doing your own research. Or maybe even bishop a5 is better. Yeah. Looking at it, bishop a5 just looks more natural, even though bishop c7 is the old theory. Anyways, I apologize for that hiccup. Yeah. So after bishop d8, okay, knight e4 we've covered. Bishop b2 is the most logical move, maybe. And I think a6 here, trying to go for b5. They go for a4. We can go bishop a5 here. So nice position there. So that covers the move b3 in this queen d7 line. And against knight d5, bishop d8, c4 I think is the most human move. If they play knight f6, we can just take with the bishop, knight h2, and bishop d8, retreat back, try to go for f5. For example, c3, bishop b6, knight g4, and f5 here. ef5 and rook f5, we have a lot of pressure. We're very happy here. So instead of knight f6, there's a move c4. And this is where we can bring the idea to life with knight h7, either trying to go for knight g5 to trade off the trade off all the pieces and then just go like for g4, or trying to prepare f5 here. So against b3, just solidifying the position, we can play knight g5, bishop g5, bishop g5, h5. And okay, there are many deviations again here. I think queen d2 we can just we can even just play like takes and bring the knight to d4, or yeah, that seems to be the only option recommended by the computer. d4 and there's always going to be a fork on c2 if they take on g5, so we should be happy here. We're going to push g4 next. Okay, that's against queen d2. Against bishop e2, I think it's we can just play bishop d5, cd5, and knight e4. So now we have this strong knight. It can't be kicked, and I think we're very happy here. As I mentioned before, I apologize for this not being like super detailed on like the plans and like concrete variations, but there is so much to cover in these variations. So unfortunately, the best I'm able to do is just provide recommendations on what to play against this, what to play against this, but not really go into the rabbit hole of these variations. Okay, so anyways, queen d2 we've covered. We can just take on d5. Bishop e2 we've covered. We can just take on d5 again. And against knight c3, this apparently is the best move by the engine. We can play a6, queen d2, g4, hg4, bishop g4, rook e3, trying to go for an attack. We can play the move queen e7 here. We're trying to bring the queen into the game. For example, knight d5 and queen h4, g3, queen h6, and black can still play moves like b5, or try to go for bishop e6, for example. Looks like a pretty good position. Bishop e2, bishop e6, I think is fine. So yeah, that covers the I think the knight d5 move. Yeah, that covers the knight d5 move in this position. So that actually covers the queen d7 line. Yeah. I believe that's it actually. Probably there's this is a sideline. There's a sideline, something that I want to mention. Instead of bishop e6 and bishop f1 and going for those lines, we can also play the move a6 here. This is a sideline. It was presented by Grandmaster Brian Smith in his ichess.net video. So the idea of knight of a6 is that white wants to play. If white plays knight d5, then we can take on d5 with the knight, and we don't want to have our bishop on e6 getting forked here. So bishop f1, queen c7. This is definitely playable, I think. And against knight d5, we can just take and go knight b8. We have great play here, I think, with like bishop f5 and bishop f6. Yeah, with these arrows, you can see it's just beautiful. So I guess that's against knight d5. And against bishop e3, we can play knight a5, trying to go to c4 or, yeah. And queen d2, we can play bishop e6. I think knight c4 is a blunder here because they can go for the sacrifice bishop h6 here. And oh yeah, white's attack is pretty strong. So don't play knight c4. And against bishop e6, b3. This is probably the this is probably still the reason why I don't recommend this sideline with h6 instead of queen d7. I recommend still queen d7 going to those complex lines because I think that after this position, this b3 move, it kind of gets awkward here for black. Yeah, if we're forced to make a move like b6, which is like apparently the top engine recommendation. Yeah, okay, there are tactical possibilities with knight a4 even, but even then we're not happy to see this. We just weaken our pawns. So yeah, that's the a6 variation. Okay, there's the bishop e3 and we've already covered that. So I think that's the sideline, but it's definitely playable in like blitz, for example. So just recapping here. Knight c3, knight c6, bishop e2, and e5. Okay, just recapping the e5 variation is that this gets into complicated stuff. Remember against knight b3, we play bishop e7 castles, and then we play a5, try to go for a4. And if white plays a4, then we play knight b4. And then we play bishop e6 and d5. We try to go for that setup. Or if they don't allow d5, then we can play rook c8 and try to pressure the c file. So that's the gist of it, which I think we get very comfortable there. And against like knight f3, remember we need to play this h6 move. Play bishop e7, we castle, bishop e6, and queen d7, which is the line that I recommend, and a lot of people recommend as well. The last variation, the last option was recommended by Sam Shanklin in his chessable course. I haven't gone through it. So I don't know any of his lines per se. Maybe I know it from the short and sweet, and I may have taken notes and taken bits and bits from there. But for the most part, I think g6. I've also put analysis by Yermolinsky, by Alex Yermolinsky, and the idea being obviously like the bishop on e2 isn't as great as on c4, where isn't as great as it was on c4, where it could, where they could get a good version of like the dragon. But other bishop on e2 is quite a bit more passive. And so here there are a couple of moves. I think that b3 is keeping it flexible after bishop g7 castles. We're gonna get a game here with castles and bishop e6. And in here we can like get a typical bishop e6, rook c8, a6, b5 setup. We should be happy there. And remember that if the knight has retreated to b3, we have this option of playing bishop e6 rather than bishop d7, which is more passive. And here maybe g4 is an interesting move, but the computer hates it. So castles, don't be afraid of it. And against g5, we played the interesting move knight h5. And Stockfish says that basically after white wins the pawn on h5, there is no attack here. f4, f5, f6 is way too slow. And our queenside play is more relevant with a6, b5, I think. Or even like a5, a4, yeah, I think. So bishop h5, gh5, queen h5, a5. And after a4, knight b4, we get a lot of pressure here. For example, queen e2, queen c7. The pressure over here is a lot. They can't play bishop d2. They're forced to castle. We can play bishop e6 next. And we can see the evaluation is pretty insane, even though white is up a pawn here. So that covers the knight b3 line. I mean, the gist of it at least. Bishop e3, I think if white tries to go for the Yugoslavia attack, it's not as effective. It's not as effective because the bishop is on e2. So queen d2, We can play knight g4 here. I think this is one of the lines recommended by Sam Shankland. Bishop g4, bishop g4, and against knight d5, he recommends bishop e6. Castles, bishop d5, takes, queen e5, and like going for this simplification, rook c8. Yeah, this is not, I mean, the e5 line against the bishop e2 classical Sicilian is what I recommend, so I'm just going to go over this quite fast. That's what happens with knight d5, but against f3, bishop e6, knight d5, castles, bishop d5 takes, and knight e5, b3, rook c8, h4, and I think we should be fine here after h5. Yeah, so I recommend going into research on these dragon structures yourself, or even just like buying Sam Shankland's course. Okay, so against castles and bishop g7, knight b3, castles, maybe the king h1 is, I don't think it's very dangerous. We can just play bishop e6, f4, and queen c8 here. And against bishop g5, which is interesting. You rarely see this in like dragon positions. I think just bishop e6, king h1, and h6, bishop h4, g5, bishop g3, and d5 here. We can break in the center. It's pretty good. Knight c5, de4, knight e6, fe6, bishop c4, queen c8, bishop e3, knight e5, queen e2, queen c6, rook fe1, knight b3, ab3, and a6 here. So this is roughly equal, even though we have these looking like terrible triple pawns. We are up a pawn here, so the key thing being that the b2 pawn is also weak, and this bishop has great potential, meaning that if they take on d5 now, I think it's already a mistake because of this, and b2 falls, and then like rook a rook e1, I think bishop f6, or even rook f6 is recommended. Yeah, and we should be slightly better here. So I think that covers basically everything about the bishop e2 line. If you have any questions on certain positions, or even if you want to contribute, please do tell in the comment section below. So I think that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching this analysis video. As usual, I recommend checking out the resources. For example, Alex Yermolinsky's book on the Classical Sicilian from 2005. Next, I also recommend checking out Sam Shankland's course. He recommends g6 against a lot of systems, which I think is safer, and maybe you get into less trouble in playing like these dragon setups. So yeah, that's definitely what I recommend. Again, thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time. Please do follow my socials. I also stream on Twitch, and please subscribe and like the video. Thank you very much. Stay safe and have fun playing chess. Bye bye everyone.